Okay, so we're live streaming in the Facebook group right now. So if anyone has any questions at the end of the show, we'll be able to pick them up there.
Great.
And so yeah, we'll be getting started. And at the very beginning, I just do a little drop in for everyone, and then I'll introduce you, and then we'll just dive right in.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
30 seconds.
So
All right, I'm going to send the feed your way. Have a great show.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
hello, everyone, and welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I'm your host, Lynsie McKeown, and you're listening here on the Voice Empowerment Channel, Voice America Empowerment Channel. And so, are you a woman who feels that the current model for living, loving, and leading is outdated, limited, and unable to take you to the next evolutionary level? Now, I know I feel that way. And I also sometimes struggle with really wanting big change in my life, but not really knowing how to do that or what to do or where to find the resources to guide me into this new way of being and how to really create this long-lasting and sustainable happiness that my heart craves. So today we are going to have a very special guest who's going to be our guide to answering some of these deeper questions. And before I invite this incredible woman onto the show, we're going to do what we always do, which is just to drop in to our hearts and take several breaths so that we can connect to each other, even though we are many, many miles apart. We are here in this space energetically. So just take a moment to stop whatever you're doing. If it's safe, just close your eyes and just take a moment to connect to your heart. You can place your hand upon your chest and then start to take deep, full breaths into the body. A smooth inhale and a complete exhale. And just allowing the breath to be this tether that pulls you from all the outer distractions and busyness of your life to the abode of the heart where there is some stillness and peace and a deep well of wisdom that is just waiting for you to tap into. And as you connect to your heart, just sense, what do you feel that missing link is? We all want happiness, but what is it within you that you feel is missing? And if you don't know, that's okay. Just breathing into the heart space and allowing the heart just to have some presence for you in this moment. Take another breath in and out. And then when you're ready, just make your way back. It only takes a couple seconds to connection with our heart, with each other, with our breath. And now we're ready, or at least I'm ready. It's always need that drop in right at the beginning, just so I could be really fully present with our guest and with all the listeners here on Women Thriving Unapologetically. And today I am joined by Suzanne Anderson. She's the founder of the Mysterial Woman, a psychologist, coach, leadership consultant, and transformational teacher. And she's the co-author of The Way of the Mysterial Woman, which I am devouring right now. It's an amazing book. And Suzanne is a pioneer in guiding women to awaken their full feminine and masculine strengths, combining insights, practices that include ancient wisdom, depth psychology, modern neuroscience. And I'm so excited that she is here today to help us understand how we can create a new model, one that is emerging throughout the world and is in the missing link to sustainable growth, happiness, and a new way of leading and upgrading the way we live, love, and lead. So thank you for being here, Suzanne.
Oh, thank you, Lynsie. My pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's so many places I want to start, but let's start here. I feel like the statistics in the World Health Organization are just skyrocketing right now with statistics around anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
and they're at an all-time high. And a lot of Western women are feeling like burnt out,
Mm.
and the symptoms of burnout, like just this depersonalization, being depleted, exhausted, they're confused, they're discontent, and yet they have so much at their fingertips, more than they've ever had. In your book, The Way of the Mysterial Woman, you start out by saying, look at where we've come from the 1960s to where we are now. And yet we're feeling all of these. I mean, for me, sometimes it feels like, I don't want to say scarcity and lack, but this yearning, like there's something that's missing.
Mm.
So can we start here and just maybe talk about where this discontent and this yearning at the same time is coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good place to start, because I think it's really helpful for women right now to have a sense of the landscape of this moment. And you listed the statistics very well. I like to think of this as those statistics, let's say, as a signal of something new trying to come in. In other words, we have run the distance on a particular operating system. I use this language of the computer because it's so understandable. How do you know, the metaphor. We wired together in a certain way. And actually, we've been inside a masculine model of wholeness for over 5,000 years now. We know that. And so naturally, some of our ways of thinking, ways of seeing ourselves, ways of seeing the world are very much inside of that model. And they're simply not a match for these times. This is the main, probably, place to start, because the missing link, you could say, to happiness, which is, I think, how we framed this conversation, is not an external something you have to add on to this outdated operating system. It's actually a upgrade that is needed so that we are a match for what the world is, the complexity of the world today. So, you know, the saying by, it's been well quoted many times by Einstein, that we're not, you know, the consciousness that we have today is not a match for the consciousness we had that created the world that we have right now. You know, we actually have to upgrade our consciousness to be ready to solve those problems. So that's the place to start, I think, which is it's sort of, otherwise women think, I've done something wrong. How come I'm not feeling happy? Why isn't this satisfying? Why am I burning out? Maybe I need to do more then. I need to get a better diet. I need to get be different in my relationship. I need to, do. And then we're in the same little rat race.
Yeah. And so why is this masculine structure, this masculine system not working for us right now?
Yeah. Well, and also I will just say, my view, and I'd say anyone who's in that world of the developmental unfolding or evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology would say that's just how, any kind of developmental move goes. In other words, the masculine as a dominant force wasn't always the case. There was a very big wave for quite some period of time that we would call more of a yin energy, when we were very clan-based, earth-based, connected to the body, connected to ritual and rites of passage and so on. But then the developmental move had us come into some of the more masculine, yang ways of being in the world. And that was a move forward as far as culture goes. But right now, well, let me give you an example of the limitation, let's say, of just the masculine parts of ourselves driving the world. When we were writing the book, we started looking around at what are all the leadership, what's the research that says how we might best be a match for these times. Like, what are the capacities that are actually needed right now to be a match for what's. So the list were things like adaptability, and the ability to be with ambiguity and change, the capacity to hold paradox, the ability to build strategic alliances with others, network thinking. So these are all things you could say, whoa, okay, that's going to require more than just power over agency, get things done, make things happen, right? This is what we would call now, and after years of research, I understand now more, this is the feminine aspect that is needing to come online now, to come together with the masculine, which has to do with multidimensional knowing, connecting to different ways of knowing than just the mind, has to do with being able to collaborate and connect with others and create fields of understanding, not just my understanding, the individual silo. So in a way, it isn't even just about the swing all the way over to the feminine, I'll just say, Lynsie, because sometimes, maybe there's a kind of balancing out where there's a swing now and everything is going to be feminine, but that's not sufficient either. We actually need these forces, both of them, to befriend them, to clean and clear the shadows that have, gathered momentum in terms of how we relate to these forces in our own psyche and soma.
So what I'm hearing is like we've moved from like a feminine epic, and then we moved into a more masculine time period because we needed that from an evolutionary approach to life. We really needed to evolve, and we needed that the masculine characteristics or traits to help us evolve in a particular way. But now we're kind of at another evolutionary edge where we need a new upgrade. And it's not just about going back to the feminine, it's about upgrading both masculine and feminine together so that we can up-level our consciousness to meet the times that we're living in. Is that
That's it? Thank you. Nicely summarized. Yeah, because and this was the research we did when I came to start into this inquiry. It was because I was in the masculine domain of leadership consulting at that time. This was the late 90s. And the women that were at the level of leadership I was working at, were absolutely suffering. Were not able to make the changes that were being asked of them in terms of how they led. They'd learned how to lead to become one of the boys. That was working really well for a while, and all of a sudden the world exploded, where it was no longer, you couldn't have all the same kind of bureaucratic structures. Things had to get more nimble, but women actually couldn't make the changes, and they were suffering. I thought, there's something wrong with this. It seems like women should be able to collaborate and connect and want to share power, and that was my understanding naively. And I thought, okay, there's an issue here that we need to figure out an answer to, which is, what is trying to happen for women right now? And I went into it initially thinking, okay, what are the new behavioral skills we need to teach to women? And discovered that was not the point. It was actually more at this level of not adding more software, but this identity level that had to do with a developmental move. And I could see women were actually stalled developmentally inside that masculine model of wholeness. And just like we developed since we were babies all the way up to late adulthood, this was a profound developmental move that was actually trying to happen. And that's what I spent 10 years with many colleagues trying to understand.
It's interesting that you say, as you're talking, I really resonate with this. I haven't been in the corporate world, but I do consider myself an entrepreneur, and I'm been working towards creating a successful and sustainable business for quite some time. And for quite some time, all the strategies that I've been learning just don't feel right to me. And there's something about it that just never seems to line up. And I never feel as if what is being offered to me now as a strategy or framework to grow really is aligned with what wants to emerge from within me. And it just gets really confusing, and I get pulled back into the I'm not doing enough, or I must be doing it wrong, or something that's wrong with me, or if I just would have tried harder, it would have worked. But every time I do that, then I get burnt out and then I'm exhausted. And so I feel myself kind of stuck in this like loop, and I'm like, how the frick do I get out of this?
Yeah. No, that's exactly, I I hear this all the time, and I really want to empathize with that stuckness that women are feeling, because there aren't that many models going forward of something different. There's sometimes I like to think of these moments of change. There's always the combination, I mean, of potent change, of tension. And you could say the old way of being, wanting to hold you the way that you are. And then there's this momentum, like what you described earlier, of a desire for something different. I really want something different, and I can't get there from here. And this is something that is fundamental to our work, and it's based actually on the understanding that Robert Keegan, who's a psychologist at Harvard, a developmental psychologist, outlines in his work, and he calls it the immunity to change. And let's just land that here, for our listeners, because it's really important for us to understand that this is a wonderful function of our psyche. That sometimes I use the metaphor of we have the sailboat, we set the sails, we know we want to go to this mountain out there, that's that desire and longing, and I want to be, running a business in this way and do it and, be in the world making an impact in this sort of sense. I'm all set to go. I catch the wind and I get just so far. And then, whoa, there's this anchor line that seems to grab me and stop me. And this is what we said in what we wrote about the call today, that you go and you set your New Year's resolutions for the year. And then you come back a year later and you go, what happened? Why didn't that happen? Well, this is because down that anchor line, there is an anchor. And those anchors, an anchor in this metaphor, are the old ways of being that are hardwired together deep under the waterline of consciousness, so in the unconscious. That's our own personal codes for being, and that's also the collective unconscious. So we've gathered these over millennia, and many of them are outdated. So until you do the deep sea diving, and that has to be done and that's the work we figured out and that we do in our programs, it's how to very precisely unhook from those old codes. One of which you just mentioned, which is in the first archetype in our archetypal pathway. And the first archetype is the mother, and the old code is, I am not enough. Now, that's not just mental, it's actually coded in the body and coded in the heart. And until you start to befriend it, because we're not going down to yank out the anchor, because it held us, it was, there for a good reason. We actually want to befriend the energy or the part of ourselves that got split off into that shadow place. And that's the nature of the work. So I think, what you're surfacing here is super important, that the immunity to change is not a mistake, or a problem, that, that's that sense of I've done it wrong as a woman. It's that we're actually being asked to do another level of work to be a match for these times and for our longing.
More work.
Yeah. I know. And you know what? That's the hard thing. And I will say, even in my programs, because we want this fast solution. Give me something really quick that will take care of it. My programs, and the next one actually launching in February, they're 15 months long. And it isn't quick, but they are life-changing, because you can make a quick mental change. You can have an idea and say, put an affirmation on the mirror and say it every day to yourself. But for the code to literally be metabolized, the old code, and the new ones come online, that does take time in the body, takes time in the heart. And I want to say work, but it's work that, it's work that pays off. It's the best way I can say it.
Well, and for everyone that's listening, that's a really long period of time, but how many years have you been repeating the same patterns and habits and you wanting the quick fix? And then a year goes by and you're like, oh my gosh, I really haven't made progress, or I'm not as happy as I thought I could be, or I'm not fulfilling what I believe to be my purpose. And it just happens over and over again. So if a 15-month journey can change the coding within you to unhook you from or release you from those anchors that are keeping you, I don't want to say dragging bottom, but sometimes I feel like I'm dragging bottom. And then why not? Why not free yourself?
Well, you have to think about what you were just saying. What's it costing you to stay stuck?
Mhm.
And there's no, sometimes people say, well, I just don't know if this is the time. And I think the world is so unstable. I promise you the world is going to become more unstable. These are the times we are in right now. There's a massive change going on. And if we see ourselves as women on the edge of evolution, playing a part in shaping the changes, then we know we have to be ready for the instability of the world. There's no good time, you could say. And we are very good, I think, women at putting ourselves very last on that list of things we'll take care of. I had someone who was just in the last program and just did a testimonial that we put up on the website. She's 30, early 30s. And the way she described it, which I thought was beautiful, was that, there were all these different directions her life could take. And she was in the question, do I just sort of let my life go on for 20 years and then do the work? Because there are women in our programs, from early 30s all the way to late 70s. So it's quite a mix. She's at the younger end. And her experience was the changes that she made now have changed, as she said, the trajectory of her life.
Yes.
So we could say we have these probability paths, they're all out there, how our lives will unfold. But we can be on a path. We can actually choose a path that's more aligned with our true nature. And this is the invitation of the evolutionary unfolding. It isn't just the work we're doing for the sake of, the unfolding of the human species or the planet or the cosmos. It's actually that there's a deep fulfillment when we are more connected to our authentic nature, our true nature, and the old habitual ways of being, these that, as I say, are deeply coded in the unconscious, those trauma, the earlier trauma patterns that have kept us hostage. When those are metabolized and we have access to that essence, there's such a deep fulfillment to be streaming it into the world. With all the uncertainty, with not knowing, we're making the world up. We start to be the women making this world up rather than the ones just at the effect of the world.
I love so many things about what you said. And, we're at our first break right now, but, just this idea that if we dive in and do this deeper work and start to change the coding and free ourselves, what can happen is we become more steady in the chaos of life. And then we can really choose and not be a victim to our past, but I don't really like to use the word victim, but we are not at the whim of our past. Like we can choose the trajectory of our life after that and not just be pulled by the chaos that's all around us, but we can be the steadying point in that. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that when we come back. So if you're listening, please stay with us because we are having an amazing conversation with Suzanne Anderson, the author of The Way of the Mysterial Woman, and we'll be right back after this short break.
All right, nice and done. We're all clear. Back in a couple.
Thank you. Okay. I am not sure why Voice America's is still showing after I've unpinned him, but how are you feeling, Suzanne?
Oh, I'm having a lovely conversation. You have a beautiful presence, and your presence to speak into is really making it a delight for me. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad because I know sometimes being on radio can be not comfortable for some people, but I really want this to be a space where we can just have a conversation and not worry about all the other things.
Yeah.
So I still, I'd love for people to understand a little bit more about the archetypes too, because we kind of mentioned that, and I don't think a lot of people are as familiar as, okay, what is
Let's
archetype?
dive in there. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. So maybe we can lead into that when we come back. unless there's a different sequence that you feel like you would like.
No, I think that's the right thing now. Yeah. We've kind of set up why you need to go under the surface, and archetypes are the way you can do that. So I think that's
Perfect. Yes. And when does your program start?
February 18th.
February 18th. How many women do you take in the program?
A maximum of 24. So it's always intimate. Last year was 24. Yeah.
Lovely.
We just finished in December the program, and so it's still very fresh. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. We're going back.
Here we go.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Voice America Empowerment Channel. And this is Women Thriving Unapologetically. And so I'm excited to continue this conversation with Suzanne Anderson, the co-author of The Way of the Mysterial Woman. And before the break, we were having a conversation about the importance of doing this deep inner work for women specifically, so that we can unhook ourselves from our past that continuously keeps us repeating the same patterns and habits that doesn't serve our greater unfolding in the way that we want to live and love and lead in this emergent times. So Suzanne, we were talking, you touched a little bit on archetypes. You mentioned the mother in the first segment of the show, but can we just go back and just explain a little bit about the archetypal structure that you work with and the importance of working with archetypals?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, that was what we spent years actually figuring out. So 10 years, in fact, in our programs, which we were very deliberate about embedding in universities, so that this consideration and exploration of women and development wouldn't get put over into the eddy somewhere, but be more mainstream. And we were surprised as we started to work with hundreds of women who came through the programs and looking for what opened the pathway, what kind of opened the door for women to, as I've said, upgrade the inner operating system to start to experience themselves more fully, and then build the capacities that were a match for the time. And what started to show itself was, well, we realized, okay, what is feminine and what is masculine? First of all, there were some very simplistic views of feminine and masculine. And the very first thing we saw was, well, actually feminine, we have to break that down. There's a more static form of feminine, and there's a more dynamic form of feminine, and they get mushed together, and then we can't really see how to relate to those forces. And then same thing with the masculine. There's a more dynamic and a more static form of the masculine. And then we realized, okay, so most of this work is not going to be, it's going to have to involve what we don't know, not just what the conscious mind knows, as I said before, not just skill building. So then we have to go under the waterline. How do you work with the unconscious, which is, that part of us that the conscious mind does not want a relationship with? And Carl Jung was the one to bring in the idea of archetypes. So this idea that there are these, you could say, energetic patterns, almost magnetic patterns in the unconscious, that the personality you could think of the personality as little magnetic iron filings sort of cohere around. And what we began to see was there were these very distinct, very primary archetypal energies starting to show up in the women that we were working with. And then we began to see, oh, these actually follow a developmental pathway, like from when we were going from when we are babies all the way up through adulthood. So the first one in this series of 5 is the mother archetype. And that archetype takes us into when the connection with ourselves, the ground of our being, our enoughness. The limiting code there is, that's down in the DNA. I am not enough. and the liberating code that starts to come online when the work is done is I am enough just as I am. There's a capacity to learn how to rest into being. But then we began to see, okay, so we can't just work with that sense of my own enoughness on its own without dealing with the other end. There was this other end that kept showing itself, which was the masculine end of this first polarity, which was the hero archetype. So it's a dynamic form of the masculine. And the limiting code there is I have to do to be of value. Limiting, clearly connecting to the limiting code of the mother. I'm not enough and I have to do to be of value. The liberating code for the hero is I am empowered to do what is mine to do.
So can I just ask one quick question? I always hate to interrupt. When I was reading through the limiting beliefs and I was like, can you have all of them at once? And so because I feel like both of those are true, so they're actually linked together.
Right.
So if
And
you
the
could
problem,
go ahead.
yeah, the issue is that until I would say this map, what this book gives you and what our work gives you is a map that you can follow. And what I think just working at the end of the mother, which is a lot of people, I want to go back to the feminine, I want to go back and remother myself and become you can do as much of that as you want. And that's what we found in our research. Women were doing that. That's where we started. But until we worked with the shadow at the other end of this, pattern that's been around for 5,000 years, I have to do to be of value, we weren't going to get any traction either way. So both have to happen. And that sets up actually the next move, which is to the second polarity. Can I give you those next two? Yeah.
Please do.
And then this was, I would say, a surprise to us also. The polarities, they showed themselves to us. So we didn't invent them. I'd say we just, like an archaeologist, you just dust them off and see them. The second polarity is, after, let's say, that move in our own development where a woman goes into the world and, goes to school and gets her life on track and that sort of heroic energy. But at a certain point, you want to build the structures of an adult life. You can't just keep, doing things in a million different directions. And that archetype is a little different flavor of the masculine. We call that the static masculine, and the archetype there is the father. That father archetype where you actually build the healthy structures of an adult life and you know how to create order and systems of belonging. Now the limiting code there is I do not belong. And it's, that's deep in many of us are trying to fit into these patterns that just are not fully us, whether that was in your family or in culture itself. And then the liberating code is I am at home in myself and naturally belong. You can kind of feel how different that is. But that's a big piece of work because that's where we're stalled in culture right now, is the father archetype. It's massive, the patriarchy. The other end of that polarity is the dynamic form of the feminine, which is the maiden's expression. And that is that, desire to express ourselves, to be spontaneous, to shake things up, to break things up. And we see this playing out in the world where that force has come in. It came in here in Western culture in the 60s. The whole women's revolution, the back to the land, sexual revolution. And that shaking up, however, without understanding that it's connected to the polarity of the father, you can, that's often the desire, I want to be free. And so we leave our relationships and our workplaces and we just burn the barn down. When actually this force is trying to come online in a more balanced way in relationship to the masculine structures of the father in our lives. So that's the second polarity. Anything you want to add there before we go to the last one?
I keep coming back to this feeling that, maybe the disruption that sometimes I'm feeling in me is because I have all of these things happening at once. I have this push-pull of the mother, the hero, the father, and it never feels like when you're talking, it's not just one thing happening inside me at any given time. They're parts of me that are having a conversation and trying to pull me in one direction or push me in another direction. And sometimes it can be like a little maddening. And
Yes.
is that a common thing that most women feel that come through your program?
Yeah, yes, very much so. That all of these, because they're all looking for the upgrade. You could say all of these forces in our psyche and soma are seeking a fuller expression. We want access to the capacities that the mother gives us. We want to be able to be self-compassionate, to have compassion for others, to take care of ourselves and the world, and rest into being and value being as much as doing. We want that, but we also want to know what is ours to do. That's the hero, and be able to move into the world with agency and not capitulate and not be the power over person and not be exhausted all the time. And in the second polarity, we want this, the maiden end of it. We want to be free to express ourselves. We want to have our voice and have our sexual, wild, feminine nature. But we also want to make a contribution in the world, to fit and be in systems of belonging, to make a difference, to have order and sustainability in our lives. So all of those are true. Now, what I would say, and this is what we call the mysterial sequence, I would always say, women actually first started coming into this work with the maiden energy waking up, because that's what's waking up in culture right now. I just want to be free. I just know there's some new way to express myself, and I feel so stuck and limited. And we would always say, okay, if you're going to come into this program for the period of time that you're in it, we're going to ask you not to leave that marriage, job, whatever it is. Just that's the crucible, the cauldron right now that's heating up. We want you to be in that, unless it's dangerous, because there, wherever you go, there you are. We want to see, you want to be able to see the way you've constructed reality that is leading to this situation the way it is, so that you can set yourself free. And this is what happens. Now, very often, in fact, the opposite happens. Women are very different in their relationships. They don't always leave them, of course. They don't always leave the job. In fact, they finally get promoted maybe, or they do choose to leave, but they leave on different grounds to start something that's more aligned with who they are and not just reactionary. But we always say you have to start, even if you come in with this maiden desire, you start with the mother. That's the deepest and oldest in us.
Yeah. And I can see why that would be so important, because if the limiting belief there is that I am not enough, that's going to have, roots in every other stage in your life.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
it pings up to so let me just bring in the fifth archetype now. And she is this archetype, I feel, is trying to come in culture right now. It's essential that we call it the crone archetype, the wise woman archetype, the sage. It's been trying to come in, as we know. It's tried before and gotten burnt at the stake, but it's actually essential now. And this archetype cannot come in its fullness, in my experience, unless the tincture essences of feminine and masculine all the way along that developmental pathway are cleared. Otherwise, you get a lot of shadow crone, which is not what we want. We want that full-bodied crone. The limiting belief of the crone is I don't have enough knowledge, influence, or connections. Like there's just someone missing this thing that I should have. And the liberating belief there is I am an evolving source of wisdom, love, and power. It's such a different way to live, right? But you have to be willing to do the unhooking from that energy. And what's so beautiful to see right now, and this last program was so obvious, the young women are coming in with crone. So this isn't just about waiting until we're in our 70s and 80s. Actually, this energy is trying to come in right now in women who are waking up. But without any map or healthy sense, it's actually quite overwhelming for them. There's a lot of wisdom streaming in right now.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that distinction, because when we hear because of just our history and just the conditioning around what a crone is, there is that thing, oh, I don't want to be a crone, because there's a perception somewhere deep in our DNA that means you're old, or you look like a hag, or, you're wasting away and you have no value. But we're talking about the crone energy, this energy that is this, how, I can't remember how you worded it, but it just seems like this perfect blend of the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine.
Right. Well, it's actually a yin force. So you could say it's the third face of the feminine, mother, maiden, crone, in the way in our system, our sequence. But it is the first essence that actually is able to bring together yin and yang. So when the crone comes in the psyche, what we found in our research was it was like the last number in the code that opened the channel, because all of a sudden you have in your psyche this capacity that knows, I need more mother right now. It's like a mediating function, as well as bringing its own capacities in. It is, you just know, okay, right now I need to be silent. I need to hold. I need to hold. I need to hold. Okay, now I need to act. It gives us this incredible capacity, yes, as I said, to bring in another level of wisdom, and to have a power in ourselves that isn't a power over, and to have this beautiful heart open, but not just bleeding into the world and leaving nothing for oneself.
Okay, so we are up to the point where we need to go to our second break, but I think this is perfect timing because we're going to leave everyone on the edge of their seats wondering what the next level of development is. If it's not the mother, the hero, the father, or the crone, then what is this upgrade? So can we talk about that when we come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when we come back from the short break, we're going to talk about this next level of evolutionary development that really is calling to all of us right now. So after the short break, we'll be right back with Suzanne Anderson.
Okay, good segment. All clear. Back in 2.
Thank you. That segment was a little bit shorter just because we didn't go to break on time just because we're having such a great conversation. So
Anything you want from me, or anything I can do differently, or?
no, it's great. I'm really excited to talk about the Mysterial Woman next, and then and talk about why women. You know, this is a program for women, and we're talking about how this this upgrade is so important for women and why women are really the key. Like, why aren't we having men come in and do this program? Or I mean,
Right.
I believe they need an upgrade. We all need an upgrade,
100%.
but
Yeah.
but maybe we can touch a little bit on that as well, and then just make sure that we have time to talk a little bit more about your program.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love
Yeah.
that. Is there are you going to give me, well, I'll ask you after whether I'll get do I get a recording it so I can send this out in an email?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will be on demand, if not later today, by tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
It happens really quickly.
Great.
And I'd also like to touch on, if we have time, what would you say to women who feel like they don't have the time, the money, resources to do the program? Okay.
Well, that's why I wrote the book too.
We're coming back in 12.
Okay, thank you.
And we should mention my second book too.
Empowerment.com.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello and welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I am Lynsie McKeown, and we're having an incredible conversation with Suzanne Anderson. And before break, we were talking about the different archetypes that are really important for our developmental evolution. And we hopefully left you on the edge of your seat, so you're still with us to hear the fifth archetype that's going to be coming in. So we talked about the mother, we talked about the hero, the father, and the crone. And so what is the next stage or the next archetype, Suzanne?
Well, the 5 actually are, we got to don't forget the maiden. We have the
Oh, I
mother,
forgot the maiden, yes.
the hero, which would be interesting to think about, because the maiden is about some of what you're looking for, as you described it at the beginning. So
I'm forgetting about her.
I know. Yeah. So father and maiden go together as the second polarity. And the 5th archetype is the crone. When we did the research, we thought the crone was the end. I mean, we thought that's what we were, in fact, we were starting to call programs, sort of use that naming. But what actually happened was some other way of being started to show itself to us. And we did not have a word for that to describe that. And one day this word just came in through me, which was the word mysterial. And mysterial is it's a made up word. I mean, I made it up, but it's a hybrid of words that we'd been working with, which was this capacity we were seeing for women to really be with the mystery, to be in uncertainty, not as a place of terror, but it's actually a place of creativity and possibility. And that was a really beautiful thing to see, because of course the new world has to come from the ability to have a space to envision it, which means you have to be willing or able to be with the not knowing, right?
Mhm.
And then we have the other piece of that, medial was the other word that came together with mystery, and that is a word that Tony Wolff came up with, who was Jung's creative muse and analyst in her own right. And that is this ability to bridge between differences, to hold a middle way. And the word holds much more than just those two things, but the word mysterial began to resonate in us. And then actually when it came in, it felt like an archetypal energy kind of coming into us. I was with my co-author, Suzanne Anderson, and the two of us just felt like we've just named something. Like, we didn't invent it. We just saw it and we named it, and it had this power of kind of landing in the room with us. So I'd love to give the 8 capacities that we see arising. Can I give you those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just partly because I want women to listen to these. Often women will say, they come into the program even having read these somewhere, and they kind of resonate, like, I want these, but how do you get these? And that's the work of the unfolding through each of the archetypes. But so multidimensional knowing, that's one, this capacity. A mysterial has the capacity to embrace paradox. And we can see in our lives why we would need that. Authentic presence. Energy stewardship. We know when to pulse on, when to pulse off. How does, doing and being. Dynamic mutuality. Like, what is it really to be in a co-creative we space? Tending the field. Oh, there's a field? There's actually a pattern that I could tend? Yes. Influencing system resonance and unfolding the emergent. How do you relate to those capacities as I say them, or what one maybe stands out to you more
The
than?
last one,
Yeah.
the most.
Mhm.
And then I can't name why, but when you said it, there was this little spark or
What do you
nudge.
imagine could be possible, or what is it that even resonates for you if you did that, unfolded the emergent?
It's for me, it's I do a lot of work around my program's about, awaken the divine feminine. And and it's because I've ignored that part of myself so long. So I've been leaning into the Tantra yoga lineage and the goddess work to really heal a lot of that wounding and become more familiar with that part of myself. Yet I don't want to throw out, everything all of my other half of myself. And so it's just this constant, how can I emerge, like pull what I've learned that's useful and healthy from one way of doing things in my life, and then allowing this new information to come in and blend them in a way so that they can emerge and through me, and I can start to express myself in a way that really lands, not just for me to feel better about myself, like not better about myself, but feel the fullness of who I am, because it's a deep yearning I have, but really to be able to serve other women
Yeah.
in a way that is really, and I always get teary-eyed when I say that. That's how I know when something's in alignment with me, is I start to cry. I'm like, why does it have to be that? Why can't I just like feel sparkly? Why do I have to weep? But that's how what I've come to terms with that guidance. And
Good.
it's just really creating space for women to step into. And I know that I can't do that until I find this emergence quality in me. Am I making sense with that?
No,
I
you
feel like,
are making sense in that. And I think even that you're trying to find the words for it. This is what we're all doing, you could say, women on the edge of evolution. We're trying to express something that we
it's
haven't.
really hard to
Yeah,
explain.
it is. That's right. And unfolding the emergent the way you're describing it, what it makes possible is something new that arises in a timing in co-creative relationship with others that our rational linear mind couldn't imagine. We make space for something else. But to do that, there are lots of fears we have to address in our own bodies and lots of ways in which that seems like, well, I should just follow this path that someone else has already been on. And yeah,
Yeah, because it's always so much, it seems always so much easier to follow someone else's path. And I hear this often with coaches that I've hired, like, oh, this person has done it this way and this will work for them. And I was like, it did for them, but it's not working for me. I can see how it would if I just sacrificed a lot of my really the health of my body and the well-being of my mind. I'm sure if I did it that way, it would work, but I can't do it that way. It doesn't, and there's something in me that's like, no, that's
right.
not
And
it.
learning to honor that. I mean, really, that is our work. And in the first book, the Way of the Mysterial Woman, upgrading how you live, love, and lead, we were really deliberate about putting practices, lots of practices in the book, so that women who would never be able to do our programs, either because of time or resources, financial resources, they could start. There are practices or inquiries that women can be in now, right now.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this is why women? Because obviously I think there's, men need an upgrade as well, but why women? Why do you feel like it's women that are the key to this new?
Well, it was interesting when I first started this work, now 20 years ago, and I was doing the studying in women, the individual psychological development of women. That was my interest. And I met my co-author, Dr. Suzanne Anderson, and she was completing her PhD as a futurist, looking at how culture, some of the positive scenarios for culture change. And the scenarios kept showing up for her, any of the positive ones, with men and women having more feminine capacities, we could say, or feminine ways of being online. That's just what started to show up in the research. And in my own experience, I began to see, okay, I'd mostly been working with men in my corporate work because there were very few women at senior leadership levels. But it became quite clear that if it's true that for the next impulse of evolution to unfold, the feminine needs to come on board, then women are going to have to play a part in that. Right now, it's actually true for men as well. I've always been in the question about should some of this work be for men and women? I'm not quite there yet because I still think there's a sanctuary for women that's really important to come into the work. But many men have read the book and find a lot of resonance with the polarities and these energies. Now, my research was with women, so I know this is a developmental pathway for women. I think it might be similar for men, but certainly there's a place for us right now to come and stand in the world as leaders who are able to bring this feminine and masculine capacities into union in some new way that I call mysterial. And I feel like if we're not able to do that, it's probably not going to happen.
Mm. And so we're only have a couple more minutes before we have to end this amazing conversation. But I really want the listeners to understand a little bit more about the program that you offer and how they can learn more about it.
Yeah, well, one every 18 months. So it's the portal's actually open right now, which is great timing for anyone who's feeling resonance with the work itself. The next program starts in February 18th, and I would invite you to explore. We have an enrollment process where, first of all, go to my website, which is mysterialwoman.com, and the program page is mysterialwoman.com. emergence program, but you'll find it on my website. And read things, watch the video, see if you feel a resonance here, because not everybody, so there are times when we just want self-help, we just want to help the self that is. That's not the work I do, and there are lots of people that do that. I'm not trying to make the current self stay happy. I'm actually inviting, in the work that we do, we invite women into this inner upgrade, and that's a fundamental transformation. So that's not for everybody, but some people totally will be there.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It
we'd
takes
welcome
I
them
think
to.
it takes a woman that is really truly feeling that yearning, that has that polarity of, okay, the discontent, but yet the yearning.
Absolutely,
And
that's right.
and both of them are a catalyzing force to be like, okay, I want to step into this space that is truly transformational and will lead to some really deep, profound shifts that will not only lead to their own happiness, but also really be the guiding force. As you said, like the crone can therefore, you'll know, and the Mysterial Woman will know where to put her energy and where to pull back, and have this great wisdom guiding her. So I so appreciate you being here, Suzanne. We're at
Well,
the end of
thank
the
you.
show, but please go to Suzanne's website. It's mysterialwoman.com. It's a beautiful site. There's incredible testimonials on there. And definitely get the book, The Way of the Mysterial Woman, Upgrading How You Live, Love, and Lead. I am devouring it right now. I haven't made it all the way through, but it is my goal to get through. Oh, and You Make Your Path by Walking. Suzanne has a new book coming out in June,
Yeah.
and you make your path by walking. And so definitely check that out, and it will be out in June. So we look forward to hearing more from you, and maybe you'll come back on the show in June to share about the book.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been
Thank you,
listening.
Lindsay.
Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne. It's been such a pleasure and an honor. So you've been listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Suzanne Anderson and myself, your host, Lynsie McKeown. We are here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to be part of our Facebook community, we have a Facebook community, Women Thriving Unapologetically, where we live stream in and we continue the conversation throughout the week. So many blessings to all of you and much love.
All right, great job today. Good show. We're all clear.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
In that. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm just going to go over to the Facebook group to see if we have any questions over here. Oh, we have lots of comments, but no questions. Just beautiful. Thank you both so much. There's a lot of, thank yous and passions and the tug of war that women are feeling.
Can I go in there and comment? Is it a page people can comment on? Where are we?
Yeah, it's my Women Thriving Unapologetically
Okay.
Facebook group. So we live stream in there. And so
Okay.
people can watch as well as listen and put comments in there. And so, or any questions. So if anyone is still listening and does have a question, we can hold on to Suzanne maybe for another minute or two. And if not, what we can do, if you have questions, you can put them and watch. If you're watching this later and have questions, just put them in the comments, and we'll be sure to make sure that Suzanne gets them, and perhaps she'll be happy to
I would totally.
answer them. Yeah.
Great.
So let me do this. I am still recording. Okay. So yeah. So thank you so much. Is there any last minute thing that you would want to share with our listeners? Or do we feel good about this? I'll put, the Mysterial Woman link in our Facebook group and in the YouTube channel and in all the notes. But is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel like is really important to end on?
I guess there's a Lao Tzu quote that I don't have it with me right now, but basically the ancient Chinese sage who says, if you want to change the world, transform the world, transform yourself. So, I just really encourage you to take yourself seriously and to recognize the discomfort right now as a signal that your deep nature, your true nature, is seeking more expression in the world. And find the communities of resonant support and the tools, and know that you're not alone in that. Like, this is an awakening. This is a global awakening right now, and you are not alone. That's probably
Yeah,
what
I love that. You're not alone, because there's so often that we'll feel that way when we're feeling all this uncertainty and confusion. And so
absolutely.
just know, women, that you're not alone. So thank you so much, Suzanne.